Alright guys, in this video we're going to learn how to factor a polynomial completely, and there will be cases where you're given a problem and you're asked to factor it, but then the problem that you get is already factored. And the thing is, you have to be sure that you follow steps before you just call it a day and say it's completely factored, because it's a rare occasion, but it does happen. So let's take a look. So let's say you're given a quadratic of x squared plus 3x minus 1. So when you're always factoring completely, you always want to check to see if there's any common monomial factors, or the GCF. Okay, so it looks like in x squared plus 3x minus 1, the greatest common factor is 1. Okay, so the second step normally is if you have factored out a GCF, if the polynomial is going to be a binomial, you have to check for the difference of two squares, which we'll talk about later in the videos in parts 2 and 3 and 4, and then check repeating factors. So since we didn't factor anything out other than 1, we're going to skip to step 3. So we're left with a trinomial, and we're going to try to factor it as a product of two binomials using the methods that we've already learned. So since our GCF is 1, we're going to create our diamond, and in the bottom diamond we're going to have our A times our C, which is going to be a 1 times negative 1. So we get negative 1. And in the top term we get our B term, which is our 3. So we have to think of two numbers that multiply together to get a negative 1 and add together to get a positive 3. And I can't negative 1 times... There isn't any factors that multiply together to get a negative 1 and add to 3. So in this certain case, it's already done. Like, our given quadratic x squared plus 3x minus 1 is already factored completely. And it's a rare occasion, but it happens. But you have to follow these checkpoints to be sure that this quadratic is already factored. So now in the second part, we're given 3r to the third minus 21r squared plus 3r. And just looking at this problem, this polynomial, it looks like we can actually factor something out. So our first step, we're going to find any common monomial factors, or finding the GCF. We're going to make our little box here, and we're going to write our three terms up here. So we're looking for a greatest common factor that we can take out. So it looks like we're going to start with a 3, because we can divide 3r cubed minus 21r squared 30r by 3. So we're left with an r cubed minus 7r squared 10r. So it looks like we can keep going actually. So all three terms have an r that we can divide out. So we're going to factor out an r, leaving us with r squared minus 7r 10, or negative 7r, excuse me. And left over is r squared minus 7r plus 10. Looks like our GCF is now 1, so we've basically done factoring out any common monomial factors. So we're going to multiply all those out, so our GCF is 3r. So going back to our original problem, we're going to write out 3r in the first pot, leaving us with r squared, which is basically all our three terms that we left in the bottom row here. So we're going to have r squared minus 7r plus 10. So then if the remaining polynomial is a binomial, which is not, so we're going to skip to step 3. So we left with a trinomial. We're going to factor the product the product of two binomials, using the methods that we taught. So we're going to go right into our diamond. And in the bottom diamond, we're going to write down the product of A times C, which is 10. And then our B term goes up on top, which is negative 7. So then we have to think of two numbers that multiply together to get a positive 10 and add together to get a negative 7. Looks like we have a negative 5 and a negative 2, so double checking that. Negative 5 times negative 2 is positive 10. Negative 5 plus negative 2 is negative 7, so that works. Perfect. So we're going to replace the negative 7r with negative 5 and negative 2. Just like so. Remember, we put the r variable with it, because we're just rewriting negative 7r as negative 5r minus 2r, which is the same thing. So once we replace the negative 7r, we're going to group the first two terms together and the second two terms together, keeping the 3r on the outside. The greatest common factor between r squared and negative 5r is going to be r, so we're left with an r minus 5. And the second group, since our leading term's negative, and we can also factor out a 2 from both terms, we're factoring out a negative 2, leaving us with an r minus 5. So essentially, again, we're dividing 10 by negative 2, which we get negative 5, negative 2r divided by negative 2 is just an r. Close it off, and then we're going to finally group our first two products and our second two products. And then if you look at it, both groups have a common binomial factor of r minus 5. So we're left with 3r on the outside, factoring out the r minus 5, and in the first group we have an r, second group we have a minus 2. Close it off, we don't need the brackets anymore, so we're going to rewrite it as 3r times r minus 5 times r minus 2, and this would be factored.